My name is Alana, and this is my story. When I was 23 weeks pregnant with my second son, we went for a routine ultrasound, and everything seemed fine, but the technician had to leave the room to go get the doctor, and so I knew that something wasn't quite right. The doctor came in and took a look, and he said that a part of our son's brain was missing, called the corpus callosum. This is a message center between the left and right brain. It controls things like motor function, balance, even eating. He said there could be a number of problems as a result, like learning disabilities or motor delay. Even because of the left and right, he might not be able to suck and might need a feeding tube. So it was pretty tough news. At that time, he did say he didn't recommend abortion because the circumstances were not definite, but they were just chances. The doctor told us to come back in about 8 weeks to check on how things were progressing. So we went to the Lord all day, every day, and I told God under no uncertain terms was I going to accept this diagnosis. My baby was going to be healed, and when we went back, there was going to be that part of the brain there, because God loves boxes and doing just what we want him to do. But I really did pray and believe that that was going to happen, and we went back in after 8 weeks, and not only had that part of the brain not reformed, but there was another problem. The third ventricle of the baby's brain was swollen, and there was excessive cerebral spinal fluid on his brain. So really my frustration with God was that I really had faith to believe for this healing, but he wasn't doing it. And I always had thought, since I had faith like a mustard seed, I knew I could move mountains, and I didn't see that happening. So my paradigm was frustrated of what I had always thought God would do if I just believed. So Christian was born, I had a C-section, and very shortly after birth they took him for a CT scan to see what, if anything else, was happening in the middle of his brain. And they actually found another problem, which was a large fluid-filled cyst in the arachnoid layer of his brain, which is out towards the skull. The doctor told me that he would try to pierce the cyst with tubing from the shunt that they were going to place for hydrocephalus to drain the fluid. And if that was not successful, he'd have to have another brain surgery to have the cyst drained. Really at a loss for what the Lord could be doing, but I realized that maybe my expectations were in the wrong place. And so I started to pray and believe that God would take this baby, even with the malformed brain, and even with all these problems and this host of potential problems, and make him okay anyway. He went through surgery. It was very successful. He came home and had a few other problems. He developed torticollis from laying his head a certain way, so he had to have physical therapy for that. And he also had trouble nursing, so he experienced failure to thrive. But once we started bottle feeding, he regained weight and was doing pretty well. By the time Christian was 2.5, he was developmentally age appropriate in all areas and didn't need services any longer. He really soared at everything he put his little stubborn mind to. We had a follow-up visit with a neurologist who happened to be the head of neurology at Chalk, and he looked at Christian and asked him some questions, and basically he said that Christian was the poster child for children with agenesis of the corpus callosum. And he looked at me kind of with a reticent face and said, you know, there are women who abort for this condition. And it was hard to make eye contact, but I looked at him and I said, I know. That was why I wanted to share this testimony, because I feel like if one woman chooses life, even though she's scared, this will have all been worth it. Revelation 12:11 says they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. This testimony, your testimony, can lay bricks in the foundation of someone else's life. Maybe a woman who's scared, or maybe a child like mine whose testimony could literally save lives.